there is specific dollars that are being set aside for implementing those platforms, and people are being held accountable for the metrics that were defined for those applications.
Hello, welcome to the AI Value Realized podcast. I'm your host for today. I'm Madhukar. I'm the co-founder of oraczen. In this episode, we are going to bring you a sneak peek from the trenches of AI, the realities of AI implementations, and it's going to be a fairly unfiltered, unvarnished look. And with me here for this episode is my comrade in arms, Biju Mohan. He is the co-founder and managing partner at Valorant. Valorant is a very cool company that does a lot of very interesting work with customers around supply chain optimization, around unlocking business efficiencies, and some very cool technological innovations that we'll talk about as we go along. That with that as an introduction, let's get right into it. Biju, what do you say?
Absolutely, Madhukar. Thanks a lot for those kind words. And I would have to say that though all those attributes are applicable to oraczen too. Very cool company involved in very cool technology and AI stuff.
Super. With that backtracking, I think we are good to start. Let's get down to the trenches here, Biju. So tell me one thing. We've been involved in quite a few very interesting implementations, but I'm very keen to hear about what are the very cool stuff, particularly in the field of AI, since that's the topic for this episode, that Valorant is doing with with your customers. Uh, what I want to ask you is, I know you're joining from Chicago and it's really cold out there, freezing cold out there. Is the market also similarly freezing cold, or does it feel like you're in the Sahara? What do you see in the market right now?
Oh, that's a great question. It is very cold. The markets, I would say, are almost, I think, reacting to climate change. So they are very cold one day, they are very hot the other day. So depending upon the time of the day, the answer would be different. But yeah, I think one of the things that's generally seen as a trend is there is a lot of excitement about use of AI. We'll get into more detail about whether that excitement is translating into reality or not. But we are also seeing some excellent applications that are being conceived as well as getting implemented across our client base. I know we work together on many of these opportunities and as well as deliverables, so it's not something new to you. But just to give you an idea, I mean, broadly, I think there are a few things that are happening which are all helping companies become more efficient. One is on the automation side. There's a lot of work going on. What are those activities that can be translated into a AI-based approach without having a significant impact on the outcome or the value of the outcome? Second is a lot of work is being done on the quality of the data itself. Companies have a lot of data, but they are nowhere near usable in a direct way. So there's a lot of manual effort today that's involved in getting it ready, even for an AI application. So how can we automate that? That's a question that many companies are asking. And then last but not the least, I think there is increasingly a requirement from clients of how can we get more insights on a more proactive, automated way. So those are some of the activities that we are seeing across clients, and in a way that is all translating into one on the hype side, which basically helps the market volatility. But more importantly, I think on a long-term basis, I think it will help in a productivity perspective, which will help companies become more profitable. So we will see a long-term impact of all these AI solutions. So hopefully that gives you a perspective of what the markets are looking like today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And spoken like a consultant, it is exactly 3 bullet points. I loved it.
Yes.
Um, but tell me one thing: is it across the board, or is it some domains, some sectors moving faster than the other? What do you see?
Yeah, I think good question, Madhukar. So while if you read the literature, if you go through what's available, you'll see that AI is sometimes being projected as like a panacea, which will solve all the problems. But in what we are seeing is there are few functional areas and there are few industries where it's probably getting deeper. Functionally, what we have seen is the most impactful areas that it helps with is areas where the human effort is augmented. So, in other words, you're not looking at replacing a human, but you're helping the human make better decisions on a faster basis. Those are the areas where we are seeing the most impact from an AI application perspective. The I think the hottest topics today is in terms of anything requiring effort involving customer support, for example. So that's an area where we're seeing a lot of work. There are a lot of companies out there who are already providing these kind of solutions, chatbots, for example, as well as an intelligent way to deflect the call to a human, as and when the customer is probably not getting their issues addressed through an AI bot, right? So that's one kind of area where we are seeing a lot of activity. The second activity we seeing which we are seeing is on the automation side, workflow automation side. So in fact, one of our clients that we're working with right now, we are looking at how we can automate their entire end-to-end invoicing and related processes on the finance side, uh, which is expected to have a big impact. One is in terms of the quality of the data entry itself, minimizing errors, making the process faster, helping them on both the sales side and the payable side and the receivable side. So it basically helps them with the working capital side of it. And most importantly, I think it helps capture data in a much more structured, real way, so that for future work, it can be used for any analysis and insights. Which brings me to the third area, which is not the most active today, but we expect it to grow significantly over the next several months. That is helping using AI to generate insights for the leadership. So there's a lot of data, there's a lot of tools that are there which captures and summarizes and provides all this information, but there's no way that gets translated into actionable insights. So even now, when a CEO or a CXO person looks for specific insights, they still have to go through a manual process and articulate their what they're looking for, and then it gets done through a very intense process to give them the insights. While there is an attempt to automate some of this, it's not yet there, but we do expect a lot of value coming forward in that, and that's something we are working on with our clients.
Useful. So if I had to summarize, I mean, my understanding of what you are saying, you feel that there are quite a few areas that you talked about, things like, for example, chatbots or augmented kind of this thing. But here, I mean, the common thread that I could see from the examples that you gave, it is a plus AI kind of an approach rather than AI only approach in some ways, right? So, so,
Yeah.
so even when you mentioned, for example, the customer support situation, you're saying that with a human in the loop, the AI maybe is there to help support, or even when you talked about, for example, that insights, it's more about how the AI can help improve insights
Correct.
rather than AI being the port of call. Is
Yeah.
that characterization of your
Spot on.
understanding?
Spot on. So I think the and it's more. I think this is more of a point that we are seeing as we go through more people's use cases and understanding what's happening in the market, right? I think the intent should not be to replace a human, but to help them become more productive. I think that's the guideline we are using in most of the work we are doing at our client. What can we do to help them improve the decision making, and everything else follows. So exactly what I think you articulated in a very good way.
Just moving away from the functionality, but more into industries themselves. Do you see a different kind of adoption across industries? For example, healthcare or financial services or supply chain, or is it from a customer size perspective, big companies doing something good, mid-range companies not so much, or is it tech companies, as always, like Silicon Valley does its own,
Yeah.
goes at a hyper speed, whereas the companies in New York or Chicago or the Midwest lag. Did you see a differential adoption here, or is that where do you see the heat map here?
So it's an interesting question because again, I don't want to give a consultantish answer. It depends, but
Yes, we are
let
in
me
the
qualify.
trenches. So shoot from the hip.
Yeah. So I will avoid the consulting answer. I'll give you a slightly more nuanced one from what I see. So the level of adoption that we have seen varies across industries. The level of the kind of approach followed also is changing across industries. So there are certain industries like technology, for obvious reasons, they are much more uh, adventurous with regard to adoption of the AI technology. So many of our clients in the technology space, you can see that they use a lot of these products, especially for capturing data on the usage of their products, information about how the interaction that their customer executives have with customers, the feedback that is received from customers during the process of evaluation, etc. All that is now getting increasingly aggregated, and companies are using that for making their better decisions. So in the technology sector, it's much more advanced, I would say, and they have a very structured way of adopting these technologies. So there are LLM ops processes in place, there are governance processes in place, security protocols, everything defined, which makes it much more, I would say, mature in the way they have adopted. There are the other industry that we are seeing a lot of support or adoption is in life sciences and CPG industries. Again, majority of the applications we are seeing is on probably, I would say, middle of the supply chain as well as in the initials, the inbound side of the supply chain. They are used, for example, in doing a lot of automation of monitoring of equipment health, production capacity, etc. So this comes up as a big point, especially in the CPG space, where they are seeing that to help improve their margins, which are narrow in the first place. So whatever they can do to make that more efficient through automated approach is what we are seeing as an some applications in the CPG space. On the life sciences, on the other hand, we are seeing how they're looking at better quality data using the AI to compare product specs across competition with themselves, with their suppliers, etc. So I would say it's still early stages. So in terms of maturity, in my observation, I think technology industries are probably the farthest. Financial services specifically are also using a lot of AI adoption. Probably they are also up there in maturity, but hampered by let's say regulations and all the security protocol they need to consider. In supply chain applications are very much advanced in the case of CPG and life sciences side of it. And on the inbound side, I would say CPG industries are pretty mature in using AI products. So hopefully this gives you a picture.
I think this does give. So you talked about the nuanced adoption approach, right? Just double clicking on it a little bit.
Yeah.
Would you characterize it as uh, does something like industry vertical, one size fits all um, uh, approach in a way where I say that, okay, I have a healthcare solution, for example,
Yeah.
right? Now, is that the right approach for companies, for AI companies or AI solutions to evolve? Or is it going to be way more customized? Like, where I'm getting to is, for example, in the early days when the ERP used to happen, SAP came up with some really broad-based templates, and they
Right.
realized that it doesn't work because retail works differently, and CPG works
Right.
differently, and healthcare works differently. And then over a period of time, the product evolved. Do you see that kind of this thing happening here, or do you see a slightly different kind of a pattern evolving from how the user requirements here are going to evolve? Complete one more add-on question here. The question is more to the fact that it processes used to be an important thing for companies earlier because you had digital processes that would work in a certain way, and that was always patterned by physical limitations.
Right.
Now with AI coming in, it's also that opportunity to break the chain. For example, I'm just saying as an example, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you don't need to see the doctor. You don't need to go to the hospital to see a doctor and have all the associated physical chain processes.
Yeah.
Is it possible for you to see a virtual AI doctor on your phone? I mean,
Hmm.
possibility. It's not too far away, right? It's in the realm of not on science fiction anymore, but in the
Yeah.
2-year, 3-year roadmap of AI companies, technologies. Do you think with that as a this thing, is it also an opportunity for you to look at breaking a few established, what shall I say, holy
Frameworks. Yeah.
cows? In a term, I put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent question. So I agree completely. I think the frameworks that are used keep evolving, especially we have seen it in SAP and where that ended up or where that is ending up today. There's no, I mean, either customers are deeply unsatisfied with what comes out as a result, then just results in a lot of cyclical issues. Uh, but yeah, I think from what we are seeing, I don't think there's a one size fits all approach that is followed today. I would rather say, to be a little bit more provocative, is that there is no approach right now. There is no framework today, or it's very ill defined. So many companies, the way they adopt technologies in this space is start with a proof of concept in a one particular problem area, which seems to be a high pain point for them, see how that can be addressed, solve it, do another problem, try to solve it, see if it works. And then, so what you have is a hodgepodge of multiple solutions, which at a local level solves that particular issue. But in a way, I would also expect it to create more work because now one solution may not talk to other and it might generate interface related uh, transactions, so which needs to be done manually. So that's the approach that most companies are adopting. But we are seeing some changes there. I think as more and more companies start building this out and start seeing the impact of it, they are also realizing that there is a requirement to look at it at a holistic level. So my expectation is I think soon there will be a more detailed framework that will probably be used. But again, that will not necessarily be very rigid, is my opinion. The second thing is to your point, right? I mean, it this is a great opportunity for everybody to take a relook at the way they deploy these solutions. So rather than using a very specific, structured, linear model, the AI helps you actually make it faster and helps you deal with unstructured stuff. So my suggestion or my hypothesis is at this point is that the way we will look at the entire end-to-end way is going to be significantly shorter because we leverage AI itself for the discovery process in the initial stage. So the question will be less about what can we do with the existing technology, but rather it'll be what is the problem that needs to be resolved and how can we solve it. So the short answer to your question, the TLDR of all this is right now, I think the frameworks are still evolving. You see structured frameworks that is rolled out by all the big four and Accenture and the big names of the company, but I think of the industry. But the adoption of that is going to get more solidified as we go, and it's not going to be like it'll not take years. It'll probably take months before it becomes a framework. Uh, so I do have a follow-on question based on what I just said, but does that help answer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I know Madhukar, Oraczen has been doing a lot of work in the AI space. You probably work with a lot more clients across more functional areas and the kind of work that you do beyond what you're working on with Valorant today. So I mean, every technology that you hear goes through a hype cycle, right? You had the crypto boom a few years
Correct.
back. Then before that, it was all about RPAs and everything and cloud infrastructure, cloud computing and everything. Uh, Now we also hear about quantum computing, etc., etc. So where do you think is the hype cycle stage for AI today? Is it like wow, people are so excited, let's do it. Is it now at an enterprise level, or is it like, oh, you know what? I thought this is going to help me, like some kind of disillusionment. Where are we? Where do you think it is? What's your opinion?
That's an interesting question. Um, it's I think the hype around AI is real. That's something undeniable. I mean, you can open. I mean, it's almost impossible to get past a day without either reading it in your timelines or in your TV or in your newspaper and so on. It is real, and for sure, it's here to stay. I don't think it's going away. It's not like it's very different in some ways. And call me a little bit of an optimist here as far as this technology is concerned. Of course, it's easy, especially if you have come from the standpoint that, oh yeah, I was there. Of course, both of us are from a vintage where we did see when Netscape came in and the
Yeah,
2000 boom and so on, and then that was the day the world changed, and then we saw that repeat 10 years later, and then another 5 years later, and so on. We've
at least
been
we
through that
avoided the
cycle.
punching card system, right, Madhukar? So,
Absolutely. And then, but the fact remains that with each of these hype cycles, our lives got better, our businesses got better. I mean, the world has seen a definite improvement, and that's why I think this technology is has a long way to run. Of
yeah,
course, there's all sorts of forks. There's some of these discussions evolve into things like a singularity and so on. But if we focus on the enterprises and focus on what enterprises can do, I really think we are in some ways a wild west. That's the way I look at it. It is that this technology has the potential to break so many things that the enterprises have today. So in some ways, enterprises will go through a huge kind of a churn in the way they look at applications itself. There's a new way to do applications, and I think we are getting there. Now, is AI ready, and which was the original question that you had to meet that promise? I think we are, because last year was the time when the most of the managers would have the CEOs calling up and saying, hey, what are we doing on AI?
yeah,
And then you and us, we got involved in so many of such discussions over the last year
right.
in trying to work with our clients. Now that the reality is AI doesn't meet that promise.
Okay.
But it's an opportunity, the way I look at it. It is an opportunity for companies like ours or Oraczen to step in, right? Because what today's AI is a very consumer oriented technology. It's a very consumer centric technology. The
Right.
way AI has been designed ground up is around this mythical, not many people understand
Okay.
core of it called as LLM,
Yeah.
right? And then
Yeah.
everything is built around LLM. Now, what happened in that LLM, which is of course a marvelous technology, but what happened is AI evolved into something that answers questions. You could just log in and say, hey, you know what? I have tomatoes and cucumbers and tuna in the fridge. What can I do about it?
Yeah.
And it would say that, okay, you make whatever, some sandwich out of it, right?
Right.
It could answer your questions, but can it do the sandwich for you? No, right?
Got it. Yeah.
What enterprises need is that doing part. It's
Wonderful.
not enough to answer questions for a company. For a consumer, maybe that's good enough. For a student to know what is the right answer to solve a problem, that's good enough. It's also a consumer problem today. But go to an enterprise and the CEO says, okay, what do I need to do to improve profitability for the next 3 months? Generate an insight.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't have the data. It needs to talk to some systems, get the data, do that analysis, to
Got it.
print a report, create a report, and that's how companies work, right? That's
Yeah.
how humans and employees at companies work. That we are not ready yet, and that's where the disillusion cycle has come in. CEOs have wisened up, asking the questions. Is it hallucinating? Is it for real? Some of the projects we've seen projects getting shelved, right? Because it didn't meet a certain specification. But the problem is not in terms of what AI can do, but what in terms of what AI has been asked to do, and the maturity of technologies are there. And that's where AI Oraczen comes in. So we are trying to bridge the gap between the seeing and the doing, as the answering and the doing bit.
Understood.
So we build that agentic technologies that an enterprise needs to be able to convert an answer that an OpenAI can come up with to actually getting companies to use them in their enterprises, right? It does things. And that's where we come in. So for us, it's a great thing that we are in that section of the cycle, because now I can go to a customer and say, hey, you have this problem. I have the right answer for you. So we are very hopeful, but that the AI has to travel that difficult path in terms of getting out of the hype cycle or the disillusionment zone right now.
Awesome. Yeah. So I look forward to the day when Oraczen comes up with a AGI or a general intelligence kind of a tool, which will probably replace us here too at the podcast and talk to each other maybe.
Oh, the dream for everyone, the singularity dream. Of course, we can have your avatar talk to my avatar over a podcast, and we could be
Exactly.
sitting
Yeah.
a
We can
pina colada in a Hawaii, right? Yeah, why
absolutely
not? Why
looking
not?
forward to it.
Perfect. So moving on, then uh, I I have a bit more a specific case here. We talked about, you mentioned in your earlier one where companies are doing POC after POC after POC, but not really going further. So, are is it are there real use cases there? Question is, have you come across a real repeatable use case that now you think it's ready, as in companies are ready to implement, or are companies still stuck on the test the use cases zone right now? And will it be another 6 months before they come out of it? And then ready say, hey, this is real. Let's go about it. Do you think we are going to get there sooner, or is it still going to be a little bit of like I think the famous chairman Deng Xiaoping's statement, right? You cross the river by testing. I mean, by feeling the pebbles underneath, right? You
Right.
know how deep the waters are before you cross. Do
Right.
you think we are still in that stage? Our enterprises in that stage?
I think it's changing. So there are definitely applications that have been implemented and now are being used on a regular basis. So I think, as I said earlier, customer support is an area where there's a lot of ongoing implementation as well as established products that are being used at an enterprise level. Uh, uh, the approach will, I think, continue to maybe start with a proof of concept, but I think what we will see now is it coming under a more structured approach where you will also factor in things like, how does it fit with the rest of the suite of already existing solutions on the AI side? How do we minimize or how do we factor in any interplay that's needed between those applications and with legacy systems, any API kind of interface that needs to be done, right? So at in other words, so at the enterprise level adoption, like a regular ERP platform or any of those customer CRM tools that exist today, that level I think is going to happen, is already happening in a way, and it's probably going to become the mainstream approach for implementation pretty soon. I would say as early as in the next 6 to 8 months, if not earlier. I think one of the things that we are seeing is one of the obstacles to an enterprise adoption has been considerations on the data usage. How is the data created? How is the model trained? What's the privacy concerns that needs to be addressed? So those are now, I think there is a better, clearer way of addressing those as these products are rolled out. So we expect that application for approach to be much faster. Yeah, I think that's probably how I would put it. Speaking of implementation, since you mentioned that this is now the approach that you are looking at of concept versus asking a question versus doing it actually, right? I mean, that bridging that gap is what oraczen is focused on. Is there a recommended way of implementation that you would suggest for customers or clients based on what you're seeing? Because there are a lot of AI technologies out there. There are platforms, there are LLMs, there are applications. So what's your suggestion for how do you go about implementing some of these?
Yeah. Actually, here that's a great one, Biju. This is a place where I would actually go a little bit against the current grain of thought as far as the market adoption is concerned a little bit, and maybe uh, uh, it's the right thing to do for enterprises. The thing here is, right now, if you see how things are evolving in the AI, it's very opportunistic. There are a whole bunch of products. For example, there is a small product that you can use for, say, marketing automation, AI automation. Something that you can, Copilot comes up with some fancy gadgets for doing some small automated email answering. Small gimmicks, how AI is used, right? And companies are very happy saying that, okay, done, now my AI objectives for this year is done, a very ad hoc way of, you come across an opportunistic product and you try to solve it and you do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
While it solves one problem statement for companies, which is in trying to create that the so to show some progress back to the board and so on, but you are missing the woods for the trees in some, the trees
Yeah.
for the woods kind of a this. The right way to do it is actually, if you, because where AI really shines is in, if it creates this concept called as an organization brain. This is something that we have in our Zen platform. You might be aware, the memory Zen concept, right? Where you transplant a few of you keep training the AI system, right? And then slowly start making it do things one by one in a program kind of a fashion. So,
Okay.
so basically, instead of an ad hoc, let's pick up some four, this thing, let's do a POC and then do it. It would be actually make a lot more sense. You need to look at it holistically, because the point that you made earlier, which was a very important point, which is companies, where AI will live and die for a company, and companies can also live and die uh, if they don't do it right, is in protecting their IP and their data.
Right.
Right? If you are a healthcare company, you can, go opportunistic on data if you want, but if you start losing your patient data, or if you go against compliance, you're putting your own company at risk. You are much better off creating an overall AI program, creating the guardrails, creating a
Okay.
structure in which how the knowledge is there, when are you going to use a certain LLM, when are you going to use another set of LLM, and not depend on what a Copilot gives or what a Salesforce does something in Einstein. It's so easy to get sucked into it, because without even realizing the fine print that you are running into, right?
Right.
Because somewhere in the fine print in that 100-page document, you will find this thing that says that, okay, you know what, your data is going to be trained to use that model, and there you go, because you've been doing some small thing with that LLM where you've been feeding it patient records. Now it is a part of some trained model, and you are opening yourself up to litigations at a later date, right?
Right.
It's a huge risk. Much better of looking at it as a program. And again, to make a small pitch for exam, that's where we shine. I mean,
Yep.
we have the Zen platform that has security components, that has memory components, that has configuration components, that has the components to talk to different parts of your ecosystem like SAP, Salesforce, exchange data with them, talk to them, and so on. And the whole agentic uh, platform itself, right? Do things,
Right.
right? If you can think of a platform way of doing it instead of individual products. So if I were to take a parallel, and this might actually explain it a lot better, if I were in the 2003, 4, 5 timelines
Yeah.
back in those days, when we had
We
younger
were
and
young
we had a
kids.
lot more
Yeah.
hair in the, yeah, we
That's
were
what.
looking
Yeah.
better.
let's not date
First,
ourselves, but yeah, when we were,
exactly. But no, in those days, companies were doing custom apps. There would be somebody who would come up with a point, nice application, do it. Companies would do it because that was the path towards digitalization. Just like what AI is now, there was digitalization back then, right?
yeah, yeah,
Computerization, whatever it was called.
yeah,
And then they realized, oh, no, no, it doesn't work for companies. What we needed was not accounting packages, not procurement, not some of those things. I needed a SAP. I needed a ERP system because then I can control how my data is used, how my data can be other parts of the platform can use my data. I can secure my data. I can use it for different processes within the company easily. You had a framework to work out of, and that's where SAP really took off, right? In
great.
those days, we are at that stage. So what we are saying is, like earlier, don't do this custom opportunistic AI implementations. Think of it as a platform. Think of it just like you would think of an SAP back in those days to create that enterprise ERP. Now think
Yeah,
of an enterprise AI platform like oraczen, right? And then think of it as a program perspective, and then do your POCs on that and expand, like you said.
great. Yeah.
So that's where I would say that it's better to take a more comprehensive uh, 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 a program approach rather than an opportunistic approach.
I think I completely agree with that. I think that aligns with what I also was saying earlier about having to have like a platform-based approach where we are looking at it at a enterprise level and not just at a point solution, because you might be
Point solution.
solving a local maximum, a local optimal, but it may not be globally optimal. But totally agree. Totally agree. I think that makes sense. Awesome. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Perfect. I actually, so if I had to maybe ask you to wear say a diviner hat, or maybe
Yeah.
you become the open AI for a second for me at this moment. When do you think uh, we will have a real money dollar spent by companies in this space? Is it going to be this year or next year? Where they're going to actually put in hard dollars, because not because it is a CEO who has somehow scrounged around and
Yeah.
believes in and has given some $5 million kind of thing, but there's a genuine ground up belief that if I spend $50 million on an AI program implementation, it will give me three times or 2x the returns.
Yeah.
When do you think we are going to be in that stage?
It's it's already happening. The short answer. In many of the clients that we speak to already, I mean, last year it was all about setting the budget, or last few years were about making sure there was a budget for the AI related initiatives, which was all done to take advantage of the hype cycle out there. But increasingly, what we are seeing is that now, if you look at the kind of applications that are in place and getting used, or at least planned to be used, there is specific dollars that are being set aside for implementing of those platforms, and people are being held accountable for the metrics that was defined for those applications. Like, what are the level of automation going to be achieved? What are the uplift in the sales that's going to be seen through use of these adoptions? So all the business case related parameters are getting measured, and an outcome of that is also that the dollars that are getting budgeted against those applications, they are seeing benefits, and that is translating into actual money being implemented. Is it all prevailing? Is it being used across companies? Not yet, but that is generally the trend that we are seeing. My feeling is that maybe by the end of this year, we'll see very defined budgets and utilization of monies for AI related products, which will be part of the existing process. And in fact, there are many companies who are already announcing process efficiencies, potential workforce reduction, etc., because of the benefits that they've been able to achieve through use of AI products. Again, some of these we'll get to know more once they start releasing more data about the impact, and we look at obviously the financials and the performance. I think that will show how well spent this money is. But the short the short-term view essentially is that visibility is going to be increased, which means that companies will feel more comfortable in putting more money into this area instead of just uh, calling it a hype and just creating those budget line items for nominal implementations. So yeah, so that's how we see it playing out over this year. So
So it's going to be real dollars and not Bitcoin dollars. I
exactly,
mean,
exactly. So yeah, so long as it's not digital currency, we
yeah,
we
I
should be
think
good with that. Yeah.
we still have the opportunity to share a pina colada in Hawaii then.
Absolutely, absolutely. Uh, Madhukar, on these AI technology side, right? So how do you see it evolving? I mean, every day you read, you keep seeing about improvements in the LLM side, about improvements in the speed at which it processes it, also the kind of the data that is required to train it, and the output, making it finer and more accurate. That's on the core side, but also on the application side, you keep reading about new technologies and new applications that are coming through. How do you see it evolving?
Actually, there is, I mean, I'm sure, you're also as bombarded as me in your timelines from, be it an open AI or Salesforce. I mean, everybody is doing AI washing now,
Yeah,
just like when there was a greenwashing and there's a whole bunch of other this thing. We are seeing a steady AI washing trend. Everybody, service now comes up with some AI, Salesforce, SAP. Everybody has some AI to offer, to sell to you. we I have a bit of this thing here, and here is where companies have a distinct choice to make. The choice, and it can be really really important. And just like, and I was talking about that ERP analogy earlier, and if I were to go back to that similar analogy, just like it was very important. I mean, if you are a retail company, you could go bankrupt if you made a wrong decision between retech or SAP, or try to
right.
implement Oracle when it was not ready. Very likely you have to shut shop a year. I mean, and we've seen implementations, those kind of a this thing where companies actually shut shop because they had faulty implementations and they couldn't recover from
Yeah,
the losses they took. Right? We are also entering into an era, and then this is not as a scare, but it's a real because an AI, this thing is going to be much more seminal, because in
okay,
some ways what you are also going to be doing is you're creating an organization brain over a period of time. You've done right now. Would you trust your existing Microsoft? Would you trust to keep your organizational brain in say a monopoly or some this thing which where you would it's possible that they may not keep pace, big companies, they may not keep pace with the way you need to, the speed at which you want to progress. Or B, it might be that you lock yourself into an LLM, you train that LLM so much, and now it is this thing, and now suddenly the token price increases by 4 times. Can you
yeah,
afford the token anymore? Can your business afford the tokens? AI is going to be a distinctive cost. Just like a manufacturing, you're a manufacturing a power or worker cost is important. AI cost is also going to be significant cost very, very soon.
okay,
Let's not undermine how many, because nobody's counting tokens today. Everybody thinks because you're using it so little, but
right.
it's just a matter of time before how much you spend on tokens will become a substantial portion of
Understood.
your. And maybe we can start a consulting services at that point in time around how to
Yeah,
optimize tokens.
exactly.
But the fact still remains is that that's going to be a big cost. Now, that's where companies have a real choice to make. And that's where I think this discussion will become more and more urgent even at a boardroom level, which
Right.
is, do you take a more sustainable, maybe an open source, maybe a bit of an open framework based adoption, or will you go lock and stock barrel and trust in Microsoft to do the right thing?
Right.
Right? For you, right? It's very likely that why it's that companies need to look at a more framework, need to spend a lot more effort in trying to create a framework that can scale up and that can be a bit more future proof, and lessen the demand, lessen the dependence on a technology platform for them.
Right.
Right? Um, and then that is where I think this whole discussion, AI technologies and the bets that companies need to make, companies need to have that as a very, very clear overriding objective. Is A, like I talked about, not take opportunistic bets, spend more on a platform approach, more on thinking about it as an overall platform, but B, also look at seeing whether it's a sustainable framework for them or not. Is it an open source framework? Is it something that can grow with them, right? And they can build, they can restructure their applications to a bit more native AI kind of approach with a platform, and that's something that companies need to start talking about and
Yeah.
really, really need to address it over this year and all, in terms of the approach itself, and place their bets on the right technologies here.
Okay, that's fascinating. Yeah. Sounds like we have a lot of uh, volatility coming up in that technology.
Absolutely, and that's the question that I have for you then.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, you're the consultant. I mean, you guys work with customers a lot in terms of optimizing or helping them plan with deal with their blind spots and help them
Yeah.
navigate better, right?
Yeah.
What do you think are the biggest risk factors that companies need to really focus on here, right? So that you don't caught in napping.
Right.
You don't end up being hit with a fine or being hit with a data breach, or
Right.
there's so many possibilities that can happen, right?
Right.
Where do you think are the big risk factors that companies will need to navigate here?
Before I answer that, I'll say that I think it was someone who said, don't make predictions, especially about the future. But yeah, let me go ahead
That sounds like my grandma now.
and she was wise, obviously.
She
So
was.
let me go ahead and disregard that anyways, and give you what I think might be the risk factors that companies should think about. So there are two parts to it. One is there is, I think what is also happening is governments are coming, waking up to seeing how these technologies are evolving and the impact it has on everybody, all the citizens, right? So the natural thing that they will do is see how they can control it. So you can expect a lot more regulatory changes in this space. I know EU is already doing that. US is introducing some regulations around the use of AI applications pretty soon. So there will be a lot of related risks that will emerge out of it. Like companies today are implementing a lot of solutions which are not necessarily governed by these regulations, but as things become more clearer, there will be a need to make sure that you're complying with all these, as well as being in a position to comply with future regulations, so making it flexible. So that's a big area that companies will need to start focusing on and start preparing for. That's on the external side. On the internal side, companies, I think the key risk factors, the biggest one would be on data privacy and confidentiality. Uh, AI is only as good as, I think, true for any technology stuff, right? I mean, garbage in, garbage out at the end of the day. So if you train it on garbage data, you will get a garbage outcome. But at the same time, whatever data that you use for training needs to make sure that you're not violating any confidentiality issues with your customers, with your employees, with your potentially vendors and suppliers, etc. So making sure that there is a governance around data use, the source of data, tracking it, where it's coming from, where it's being used, etc., will be a big risk factor for customers there. The second is a little bit more nuanced. It's on change management, right? I mean, every technology, the biggest hurdle they face, end of the day, through my experiences, will people still use it? I mean, you might have all the best features in a product or a platform, but if people refuse to use it or they find a way to misuse it, then it's going to flop. So change management is going to be a big risk. How are people adapting to it? Especially in the case of AI, there's also a little bit of concern about it taking away people's jobs. So there will be a little bit of pushback because of that reason. So how do we navigate that? How do we make sure people become AI literate? How do they make sure that they understand the capabilities of AI and use it and adopt it in the right way? So adoption of that and managing the change related to using this will be a big risk factor. The third, I think you mentioned it, which I completely agree with, is about the platform-based approach versus an app-based approach. So the risk would be in terms of how our companies ensuring that whatever solutions they are deploying are scalable as the volume grows. Instead of it being applied for a specific BU or a specific region, can it be applied at an enterprise level? So they need to be answering that question immediately and thinking about that when they are putting in any solution. And related to that is how sustainable or flexible is it? Evolves, things evolve, requirements evolve. One good thing about AI is it's not necessarily dealing with a very structured problem. It can be fairly amorphous and you can still get a pretty decent outcome. Because again, the intent is to have it support a human rather than replacing a human, right? So, but so long as that flexibility and ability to evolve as requirements change is not factored in, that's going to be a big risk factor. So these are some of the things that companies need to be thinking about as they deploy these solutions. That's my consulting answer.
That's great. I love that. So basically, you think we're going to have a bigger government. You have to be more worried about the data,
Yes,
and we need to be really fast, or we'll get eaten. You know, you
absolutely.
obviously you're scaring me. You know, but I guess you've done your job as a consultant very well. Then
That's my job. Yeah, exactly.
it's really great, Biju. So I think we're reaching the top of the hour. So really appreciate the time that you spent and in the podcast, and I hope it was quite useful for everyone who is listening, and really looking forward to uh, us having a great time this year. Thanks,
Right.
Biju. Thanks
Right.
for
Really enjoyed the conversation, Madhukar. This is very interesting and educational for me too. So thank you.
awesome, Biju. And with that, so thanks for everyone who's watching. And if you like it, keep watching this space. We'll be releasing more of such value realized series with amazing hosts, amazing speakers like Biju here. And stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madhukar. Thanks, everyone.